Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Vortex discussion. Today, I want to talk to you guys about why Kawaki, the boy who has already gone through so much in his lifetime, cue the sad music, is on pace to become an even bigger monster than any of us had ever thought possible. Boruto 2 Vortex Chapter 18, which the review is now up on the channel, and we'll leave that in the description box so any of you guys who've not seen the review. But Boruto 2 Vortex Chapter 18 just took the story into a whole different tier when it comes to the direction of Kawaki's character, because Naruto's adopted son, he is on track to become the biggest threat, the biggest intentional or unintentional tyrant in the Naruto franchise. Join me in today's newest Naruto Explained video, where we're going to take a look at why Kawaki becoming an even bigger monster than Ishiki is now more certain than ever before. And I want to give an advance warning. The back end of this video is going to potentially trigger anyone who has been through abuse, survived abuse, or knows somebody who's been abused. But I felt like addressing those aspects of Kawaki's character, and I felt they are important for appreciating the gravity of what's going on with Kawaki's character currently, because he's taken a monumental switch in terms of character, one that I didn't dive into in the review. So let me be clear up front right now, because I know Kawaki fans, they get super defensive and sensitive when this comes up. There's this battle cry to declare Kawaki's not a bad guy. He's technically right about Boruto. We don't need to call Kawaki a villain. And the Kawaki Defense Force, they come out in full unity of their guy. There are times where I get accused of being a Kawaki hater. So allow me to be transparent right up front and set the record straight. This isn't me bashing the character. I do not hate the character. I agree, and I have made videos breaking down the justification and the ideology of Kawaki's actions, from sealing away Naruto and him wanting Boruto dead and why he's justified on it. And I've done a really in-depth character video essay on Kawaki that one of the editors who's going to rejoin the channel this summer worked on a couple of years ago. The split in the fandom for Kawaki's character, it is intentional from a writing perspective. We are supposed to be split down the middle. That's something I don't think people realize, which means that the vision that Ikimoto and Kishimoto have, it's working right now. So with that out of the way, as my late great-grandmother used to say, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this topic. So Kawaki's current trajectory, it paints him as a deeply tragic character poised to become the biggest monster in the Naruto franchise when it's all said and done. His willingness to use any means necessary to surpass Hidari, Code, Boruto, Jura, it highlights a dangerous descent fueled by desperation and self-loathing. So let's go through this step by step and guide you through this journey, because this is one of the more fascinating aspects of Kawaki's character, especially again when we get to the more triggering aspect with abuse at the back end of the video. So Kawaki's descent and manipulation of Amato, it is on display right here. So Kawaki's demand for Amato to enhance his power, no matter the cost, it reveals the extent of his desperation. He has now turned the tables on Amato, the notorious gaslighter. He is exploiting Amato's desire to revive his daughter. Kawaki demonstrates a willingness to manipulate and blackmail, traits that are far removed from the vulnerable boy that we met earlier in the series, the boy who everyone said, oh my god, what would ever make him turn on Boruto? What would ever make him turn on Naruto? Kawaki's such a good guy. Somebody give him some taiyaki and a hug. This parallels how Ishiki Otsuki saw people as mere tools, which ironically shinobi are viewed as tools, in order to further his plans that were on display. And the irony, it is thick. Kawaki despised Ishiki for treating him like a vessel like Jigen, yet he now uses others as tools in his own pursuit of power. His manipulation of Amato, it mirrors Ishiki's use of him, perpetuating the cycle of control and exploitation that Kawaki once swore to break. That's what that karma seal represented to him when he told Boruto, I'm going to get rid of both of our karma. There's also parallels to Otsutsuki ideology, which again is ironic because Kawaki genetically is 100% Otsutsuki right now. The Otsutsuki clan's pursuit of power through karma and through chakra fruits at the cost of entire worlds. it is echoed in Kawaki's philosophy, and it's because he is a consequentialist. While Kawaki isn't literally consuming planets, his mind state, it reflects the same disregard for morality and consequences. He is willing to sacrifice anything, including humanity, to achieve his goals. This is particularly ironic since Kawaki once stood against the Otsutsuki, viewing their actions as monstrous. Now he embodies their very ideology, prioritizing power above all else and rationalizing his actions as necessary for the greater good. As he told Sarada, "I'm an Otsutsuki that was made to kill Otsutsuki." This dissent not only aligns with Ishiki, but it also highlights the corrupting influence and power that comes with karma. Kawaki is betraying the Buddhist and Shinto teachings that he was meant to represent. Kawaki's eye represents the Dharma wheel, which is symbolizing the Buddhist path to enlightenment, emphasizing moral conduct, mindfulness, and wisdom. The Dharma wheel is a reminder to transcend suffering through righteous actions, a stark contrast to Kawaki's current path. In Buddhism, the pursuit of power for selfish or destructive purposes, which Kawaki's doing both, is seen as a root cause of suffering. Kawaki's actions directly contradict the principles of detachment, compassion, and harmony that his eye symbolically represents. By seeking strength at any cost, he perpetuates his own suffering and he also spreads it to others, illustrating his tragic fall from grace. From a Shinto perspective, Kawaki's actions, they disrupt the natural order, i.e. harmony, which is central to the faith itself. His willingness to use unethical means and manipulate others, it goes against the very purity and respect for life. By defiling the balance between human and spiritual realms, Kawaki positions himself as a key figure of pollution, further emphasizing his role as being a destructive force. This is very ironic given the symbolism of the eye. The Dharma wheel serves as a constant reminder of Kawaki's ideals that have been forsaken. It's an association with enlightenment and moral clarity that stands in stark contrast to Kawaki's growing darkness. The eye's presence, it is almost mocking when you look at it. It symbolizes a path that Kawaki could follow, but he actively rejects, which is ironic given the fact that Naruto would have been the one that guided him down that right path that the eye itself is a reflection of, which makes sense. Naruto is a character that came from a story, self-titled Naruto, that was a story of samsara. Naruto is trying to transcend away from the cycle of samsara that his very powers are rooted in. This irony deeply is used to deepen the tragedy of Kawaki's character as he wields something that should be a symbol of hope and balance while also embodying the very despair and chaos that he calls himself trying to stop. That, my friends, is a path to monstrosity. Kawaki's descent into monstrosity, it is driven by a fear of inadequacy. His obsession with power stems from his fear of being unable to protect what matters most to him, that being Naruto. It's also a loss of humanity by prioritizing strength over relationships. Kawaki becomes increasingly isolated, mirroring Ishiki's detached existence. It's also hypocrisy. His hatred of Ishiki and Otsutsuki makes him similar in that it's all the more jarring, showing how hatred can transform into emulation itself. I think it's worth repeating, Kawaki's transformation is a cautionary tale to readers about the corrupting influence of power and the danger of forsaking moral principles. His parallels to Ishiki highlight the cynical nature of abuse and exploitation, while the symbolism of his eye underscores the tragic irony of his actions. By rejecting those teachings of Buddhism and Shintoism, teachings that basically make up Ninshu, which is what Naruto is trying to teach Kawaki, Kawaki disrupts both the narrative spiritual themes and his own potential for redemption, which he'll ultimately get, setting him up for a profound character arc and a tragic arc as an antagonist. His journey in Boruto, it has always, and it will continue to be, rooted deeply in trauma, and his current actions in the story reflect the complexity that survivors of abuse have, including how they may unconsciously perpetuate cycles of harm. His transformation into a figure who mirrors the abuser that he once loathed, it can be understood through the lens of his past and the psychological scars it has left. And that's where we have to go even deeper here. And this is where I do give that trigger warning, because this is a sensitive topic. So Kawaki, as a survivor of abuse, his childhood was defined relentlessly through abuse, starting with parental neglect and then exploitation. Kawaki's father, a raging alcoholic, he didn't hesitate to sell him to Jigen, Ishiki Otsutsuki's vessel, in exchange for money. It's basically child trafficking. This act, it reinforced Kawaki's belief that he had no intrinsic value beyond what he could provide to others. His father, just prior to this, was like, hey boy, you are useless, you didn't get me enough booze. So he sells him off to Jigen, even though Kawaki's begging his dad, let me stay, this is my home too. The physical and emotional tortures there as well. Jigen subjected Kawaki to experiments that nearly killed him, from him being implanted with the ninja tech in his body that killed several others and mutilated a lot more, to having him undergo the coma seal transplant, which killed dozens of children before Kawaki was able to survive, stripping away his agency and treating him as a disposable tool. This constant dehumanization of Kawaki, it has left him with profound trust issues and an ingrained fear of being powerless and discarded. Those experiences instilled into Kawaki at such a young age, it gave him a survival mechanism that is rooted in the belief that power is the only way to protect oneself and protect their loved ones. However, this survival mechanism, it also plants seeds for a very destructive cycle. The abuse, and in particular the cycle of abuse that is present in Kawaki's actions, are the next thing you have to look at. Survivors of abuse, they often struggle with internalized messages from their abuser. Think about how Kawaki had that flashback in the anime original scene in episode 217, where he was recalling how Jigen was beating him on a daily and thinking about that goldfish. Kawaki subconsciously has internalized Ishiki's ideology that only the strong survive, even as he has been shown trying to reject Ishiki's methods and motives before eventually coming to the conclusion that those methods and motives were correct. This manifests in his current belief that gaining power by any means necessary is the only way to protect Naruto in the world that he cherishes. You also have the unintentional replication of abuse. Kawaki, in his quest for power, manipulates Amato by coercing him in the same way that Jigen was able to manipulate him, basically using the prospect of reviving his daughter to get what he wants, just as Jigen made that promise to Amato all those years ago. While Kawaki justifies his actions as being necessary to protect others, he also fails to recognize he is unintentionally perpetuating the very cycle of exploitation that he was a victim of. This mirrors the real-world patterns where survivors of abuse, despite their best intentions, may unconsciously replicate harmful behaviors that often are a result of unresolved trauma, which I think we all can agree Kawaki has a lot of unresolved trauma. This becomes even more heartbreaking when you realize the role of Naruto in Kawaki's redemption, as well as his current obsession, and the fact that had Naruto been there, Kawaki would not be on this path. Kindness was the first genuine love that Kawaki ever received. Naruto gave Kawaki a home, a sense of belonging, and a belief that he was worthy of care. However, this also created a deep emotional dependence for him. The fear of loss, Kawaki's fear of losing Naruto, the person who gave him hope, it fueled his obsession with becoming powerful enough to eliminate any threat. It's directly why he was able to reawaken the Karma Seal. This fear distorts his actions, leading him to believe that protecting Naruto justifies any cost, including harming others, or in the case of Naruto, taking away his free will by sealing him away, and by extension, taking away Hinata's free will, where Hinata, all she wanted to see was her children grow up, which is why she took on less dangerous missions so she could be there for her children. Her children have now grown up. Once she gets unsealed, she's gonna realize she missed a lot of years. That's Kawaki continuing abusing others without realizing he's done so. You also have the fact that he is misguided. So in his mind, Kawaki sees himself as a savior. shouldering the burden of destroying threats so that Naruto and others don't have to do so. Again, he tells Sarada, "I'm an Otsutsuki that is made to kill other Otsutsuki." However, this mirrors how abusers often rationalize their actions as being for the greater good. Kawaki's inability to process his trauma has led to a misguided attempt to find control through power, making him blind to the harm that he has caused others. This leads us to having to look at why survivors of abuse may repeat harm. Psychologically, survivors of abuse, they may repeat patterns of harm for several reasons. Number one, it's a learned behavior. Abuse often normalizes certain harmful behaviors. Survivors may replicate these behaviors unintentionally, having internalized them as coping mechanisms or as ways to assert control. Number two, trauma reenactment. Survivors may unconsciously recreate scenarios of abuse, either by harming others or themselves, as a way to regain control over their trauma. For Kawaki, his drive to manipulate Amato and destroy his enemies, it echoes his own loss of agency under Jigen, and it also positions him as the one who is in control this time. Number three, emotional unresolved issues. Feelings of anger, helplessness, and fear. It can lead survivors to lash out, even when their actions contradict their moral values. Kawaki's desperation to protect Naruto, it stems from unresolved guilt and fear of abandonment, driving him to extreme measures. Number four, cognitive distortions. Survivors oftentimes develop distorted beliefs about themselves and the world, such as only the strong will survive or I must hurt others before they hurt me. Kawaki embodies these distortions even as he claims to reject them. This leads us into the irony of Kawaki's descent and how it is extremely tragic. Kawaki's transformation into an abuser of sorts, it is steeped in tragic irony. Ishiki's shadow, it looms over him. Kawaki despised Ishiki for treating him as a tool, yet he now treats Amato and others as tools for his goals. This mirrors Ishiki's philosophy of using others for a means of power and survival. By protecting Naruto, Kawaki has walked a path towards becoming a monster. In his attempt to protect Naruto, Kawaki's now becoming everything that Naruto stood against, a figure willing to harm and exploit others in the name of peace. This contradicts the lessons that Naruto's tried to teach him about compassion and trust. You also have the irony of power itself. Kawaki's pursuit of power, it mirrors the Otsutsuki ideology of sacrificing others for personal gain, which he once rejected. His Dharma will pattern eye, a symbol of enlightenment, it stands in stark contrast to his destructive path, underscoring his fall from grace. We also have to look at how Kawaki's actions reflect Buddhist and Shinto teachings. Kawaki's actions conflict with the spiritual principles that are central to Buddhism and Shintoism. In Buddhism, again, the Dharma will eye symbolizes the Eight Trifold Path, which emphasizes ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. Kawaki's actions, they are driven by fear and they are driven by attachment. They lead to suffering, directly opposing the path to enlightenment. In Shintoism values harmony and a reverence for life. Kawaki's willingness to disrupt this harmony for his own goals makes him a figure of impurity, a concept tied to imbalance and defilement. His actions disrupt the balance between Otsutsuki and human and spiritual worlds. That echoes the chaos that the Otsutsuki clan has created. In conclusion, I'll finish off by saying this. Kawaki's trauma has made him into a tragic monster in the making. His descent into monstrosity is not just a reflection of his trauma, but also a cautionary tale about the cynical nature of abuse and the danger of unresolved pain. His transformation highlights how survivors of abuse, unable to heal, may inadvertently perpetuate harm, even with the best intentions, which is the case with Kawaki. The tragic irony of Kawaki's actions mirroring Ishiki and the Otsutsuki clan as a whole, it underscores his fall from grace and positions him as a deeply complex antagonist. At its core, Kawaki remains a broken little boy who never truly escaped his path, making his journey all the more heartbreaking. Which, to understand where that journey began, you really need to check out this Kawaki video essay over here on the left, or click here on the right for this video from my Anime Explained channel where I talk about non-Naruto content.